Hey guys, Graham and Chris back here with you once again. Finally, my brother, it is the first official show of the 2017 Major League Baseball season. It is upon us. Spring training has started. All players have reported as of Friday the 17th. All is right in the world again.
It's about time. I was really starting to lose hope in this entire planet and the race of people that live on it. But baseball's back, so I'll be okay.
So you have you have regained your hope in humanity because baseball is upon us.
Yes, well, baseball is the only thing that makes me have any hope in humanity anyway. Obviously, any life form that could create a game as perfect as baseball deserves a second chance.
Well, since we are getting into things, and we're starting off early, and I didn't expect it to go this route on things that cause you to have little faith, we're going to get into some fan bases that are probably trying to find a little bit of faith coming into their team's 2017 season. So let's put the ball in play on the show. And I told you I had a story that I kind of wanted to get your take on. So we discussed last week about the Marlins with a handshake deal in place. We thought to go ahead and make a sale. That Jeffrey Loria was looking to go ahead and dump the team off at $1.6 billion, make an absolute killing. Well, now there is kind of a conflict of interest, perhaps, in all this, and the sale could, at least in the understanding that we had last week, could be off. So he said that he had a handshake agreement in place to sell the team to a New York-based real estate developer. It was Josh Kushner. Okay. Well, the problem that is his brother is Jared Kushner, who serves as a senior advisor to his father-in-law, President Trump. The issue with that, where the conflict comes in, is that there was some talk in the media. The White House chief of staff had pushed for, and apparently, according to Daniel Halper of the New York Post, had received a sign-off to name Marlins owner Jeffrey Loria as the United States ambassador to France. So we are not getting into politics here. There has been a lot of discussion by various media and sports outlets that is there a little bit of nepotism going on here, some greasing of the palms. So, Chris, as much as you like to dabble in that world, which to caveat to listeners, we are not dabbling in the political side of things. It's only going to be baseball. So I give that caveat to the listeners. Now, Chris, the caveat to you, we are not dabbling in that world. This is only about baseball. Your thoughts, good sir?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that this is a conflict of interest. And without getting into the issues of political favoritism or nepotism or gentrification, I think that being the case, this deal needs to be immediately stopped. And if another buyer comes forth that's not connected to this other organization in any way, even in the most tangential way, then maybe the Marlins owner can go ahead and complete a sale. But there's no ethical way that a sale should be completed to the brother of the son-in-law of the President of the United States, who may or may not be receiving political favor as a result of it.
Now, this came down from the Kushner Group. They issued a statement saying, in part, quote, "Our family has been friends with Jeff Loria for over 30 years, been in business together, even owned a AAA baseball team together. Although the Kushners have made substantial progress in discussions for us to purchase the Marlins, recent reports suggest that Mr. Loria will soon be nominated by the president to be ambassador to France. If that is true, we do not want this unrelated transaction to complicate that process and will not pursue it. The Kushners remain interested in purchasing a team and would love to buy the Marlins at another time," end quote. So sounds like that if the the tap to be the ambassador does come from the president, that they won't pursue this. But it was a very odd wrinkle that I heard midweek. Just really surprised the heck out of me, because, I mean, how often do you end up hearing that? I mean, we've seen teams, at least our owners, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think it's Arthur Blank. You have to refresh my memory if I'm wrong on the owners, but we've seen NFL owners and such be ambassadors. I think it was Ireland and that sort of thing. But this is a lot different when the sale is coming into place with the family. So I just found that kind of odd. I was curious to get your perspective, but more so as we get really. Go ahead.
I guess the question that I have about this whole situation is, what are Mr. Loria's qualifications as an ambassador to France, and is that possible? I guess, promotion into that position? The reason he wants to sell the Marlins.
Well, I don't know. What I haven't heard is if the part of becoming the diplomat was, I have to assume it had been discussed prior, but I don't know if that was one of those things that was discussed before the sale was happening, or if he was just trying to get out. So I'm sure that I want to say I'm sure we'll hear more, but as deep as this kind of begins to delve into politics, we might not hear anything. But as we get into more true baseball stories, and we get into teams, like we said, that are kind of hoping to have good hope for the season, something that happened right after you and I wrapped up the show last week is the Atlanta Braves made quite a move and finally acquired Brandon Phillips from the Cincinnati Reds. Now, there was discussion last year that the Reds wanted to move him. The Braves were interested in coming at him. He blocked that attempt in November. So finally, I guess maybe Brandon Phillips sees the writing on the wall and says, you know what, nothing's going to happen here in Cincinnati. It's a great pickup for the Braves. He's owed $14 million this year, and the Reds are paying $13 million of it. So the Braves are picking up still a pretty solid second baseman for $1 million. I mean, as good as we said the Chase Utley deal was for LA last week, it's pretty hard to beat something like this. And all they had to give up was a couple of prospects. And this comes not long after Sean Rodriguez, who the Braves signed as a free agent, was involved in a pretty severe car crash in Miami where he and his family were hit by a stolen police cruiser, and he's going to have shoulder surgery. So, a pretty decent-sized player to get for the Braves, especially with the price tag, or lack thereof, that they're having to pay for him this season.
Yeah, I mean, how do you turn down a deal like that when you're going to get maybe not all-star quality, but certainly top-level second base play from a guy that you're only paying $1 million to?
Yeah, I mean, the Braves come out and said, he's 35 years old, but Nationals, Diamondbacks, and the Braves all tried to acquire him this offseason, and he shut it all down. He is from Georgia, so I'm sure it's one of those things that as he is kind of rounding third and on his way home at the tail end of a career, that it's a chance for him to kind of go home, play. He's been in Cincinnati for a number of years. But the Braves have said they're going to honor his no-trade clause, or it's a limited no-trade clause, 12 teams, and they'll give him a $500,000 bonus if he is dealt to a club not on his list. That's what the Braves GM said. So it makes sense to me. I mean, Phillips is actually surprisingly better. Well, not surprisingly, but markedly better, I should say, against lefties over righties, a 284 average compared to 271. But this is going to end up probably being a little bit less of a platoon type thing. I think if you bring a guy like Brandon Phillips in, you have to expect that he is going to be your everyday starter. They have several guys who work on that infield. They can move some guys around. But I would be surprised if the Braves don't give him the majority of starts, or at least have him as the prospective starter coming into spring training, and then we'll see what happens throughout the next month and a half before the actual season kicks off in the beginning of April.
Well, I think the thing that the Braves have to be looking at this point, with Rodriguez unfortunately not going to be able to play for him, at least in the foreseeable future, due to the unfortunate accident that he was in, you got to just think the Braves are hoping, okay, if Brandon Phillips can just do this year what he did last year, where he was a 291 hitter, an OPS of 736. He's not a power guy, but he's an on-base guy, on base at 300, 320. If he can just do this year what he did last year, knock in 70 RBI, hit a dozen home runs, then it's going to pick up the sort of slouching lineup that the Braves have experienced over the last couple of years.
It is, and like you said, 11 dingers, 14 steals last year. It's the 9th time in his career he's passed double digits in homers and stolen bases. He's not a power guy. We know that. And he's 291 average and a 320 on base. I mean, he's pretty much either getting a hit, a walk here and there, but he's not having that much higher on base percentage that we want to see. But it really kind of makes you wonder really what the Reds are looking for. I think, they're obviously trying to open up some playing time. Jose Peraza, Dilson Herrera, that's going to be the guys in the middle infield they're going to want to work with. Peraza was decent last year, was more so as a utility guy, but did have 256 plate appearances, ended up hitting 324, a 352 on base, and a 411 slugging, which is obviously, not in a full seasons of plate work, but when you're able to hit over 300 and just over 250 appearances, that's not too shabby. Herrera is a guy that they got from the Mets for Jay Bruce. Haven't seen anything there. ESPN's Keith Law does a lot of stuff as far as trades and grading, mainly prospects. He does a lot of the prospect lists and rankings, that kind of thing. He classifies the two guys that the Reds are getting from the Braves as pretty much non-prospects. They're not going to be on the 40-man. They're not even getting invites to big league camp. So it really, I think it seems that the Reds they kind of saw the writing on the wall. There's no way they were going to re-sign Phillips. There's a chance to at least try and put him somewhere where he had a chance to win. We've discussed with John Smoltz and Tom Glavine about the Braves' chances. Neither of them really think that this is going to be the year. We have some sound clips from them that we're going to get to here in a couple of weeks as we begin to start looking through spring training and what's happening. But it seemed it's a worthwhile move for both teams, except the Reds are eating a lot of the contract.
Well, and one thing that's obviously the Reds are eating a lot of the contract, and that's not good. They're paying a lot of money to allow Brandon Phillips to move to the Braves. And what are they really going to put in that spot? We're talking about a guy who may not be a power hitter, may not be the best on-base guy, but he is a strong, strong defender. He's a 4-time Gold Glove winner and has a career fielding percentage of just over 980, at 983. So in traditional fielding sort of situations, he's a strong defender. He's not, Chase Utley. He's not even Joe Panic, but he's a heck of a second baseman as a defensive.
Cue the Giants plug. I need to get a soundboard going for this show. That is our next goal, is that I can go ahead and give everybody a Giants, homer alert whenever I get a name brought up. It's on that roster. That is our goal this year.
So I can't bring up an all-star second baseman when I'm talking about another second baseman.
You can bring up whatever you want. I just want to have a siren. That's all. All I'm asking for is a siren. That's not Mike Goodpastor. Get me a siren. Get me a siren for out of left field So whenever Chris Furry starts bringing up the Giants, everyone will know what's coming. That's all I'm asking. That's it. But to your point, I mean, you're looking at a guy who, over the last decade in Cincinnati, hit a career 279, a 429 slugging, 3.25 or on base percentage, almost 200 dingers, stole almost 200 bags, 191, 194 respectively, and that's almost on 6,900 trips to the dish. So it definitely was one of the best trades, I think, in Cincinnati history. One of the best pieces that they brought in when they traded right-hander Jeff Stevens back in 05, 06. So it's rough to see him go. Joey Votto is going to be next as far as either they're going to have to trade him and eat a lot of contract as well, or once that time goes, it's going to be, he's going to go. And what the Reds have seen as the face of that franchise for a long time, it's about to change. And it's a tough part of the game, especially for fans in Cincinnati. But as Todd Frazier went last year, kind of knew the writing on the wall was there for the beginning of the end. And unfortunately, that's kind of where it goes. So now about more in my backyard, this is a guy, I mean, good Lord, we mentioned this 3 months ago. And I remember saying to you on the show that if Matt Wieters was not signed by a team by the time spring training started, I would be flabbergasted. So I'm flabbergasted.
Are you thoroughly flabbergasted?
Thoroughly flabbergasted. Don't know why I keep using that word, but man, it just kind of rolls off the tongue. He's still unsigned. I mean, this has to be, at least in recent memory for me, one of the worst free agent markets for a guy who was widely considered to be the best at his position on the market in the last several years. Everyone thought he was going to be picked up quick. He was a big name. We thought maybe once Encarnacion fell, he was the big domino. Still nothing, which is great for teams because that means that the value for him is just plummeting. The Rays have reportedly reached out to him with a deal. We know they've signed Wilson Ramos, but Wilson Ramos will not start the season due to ACL surgery. You still have Kurt Casale. I mean, they really caught kind of by committee last year. The kid's 28 years old, had 226 ABs last year in 84 games, and played about half the season. But, I mean, the Rays have not had anybody really, really solid. Luke Miley played 42 games last year. But when it comes down to it, one position that you don't want to do by committee is catcher. You want to have that guy who, as I've said many times, is the general of the field. It's why guys on first and third, who's got what runner when what play. The catcher is the guy always communicating to everybody, infield and outfield. Now, yes, your center fielder is going to talk to your corner fielders, and that's fine. But your catcher is that guy who you want to have with the best working knowledge of your staff, the best understanding of what hitters are going to do, what defense you need in place for those hitters. And I think it would make a lot of sense for them to sign Matt Wieters, especially if the offer sheet is going to be low in price. There's really no reason to offer him a ton of money because no one seems to really be coming after him that hard.
You know what really surprises me about Matt Wieters still being a free agent is just ask yourself the logical questions. Are there 29 catchers in baseball better than Matt Wieters?
I don't think so. I certainly, like you, I wouldn't say he's not a top 10 catcher, I don't think. But I would put him certainly 15? In the top 15, top 20 easily. Yeah, I think he's on the upper end of the I think he's on the upper end of the lower half of the top catchers. If that makes any sense.
But are there 4 or 5 catchers who are in free agency who are better than Matt Wieters this year?
Only guy that you could say might have been better than him was Wilson Ramos. And Wilson Ramos got signed. No.
Definitely not like Derek Norris.
No.
We saw 4 or 5 transactions occur with catchers this offseason. And none of those transactions, including to the Baltimore Orioles, included Matt Wieters. That doesn't make any sense to me. Someone somewhere saw something about Matt Wieters that has scared the rest of the league out of deciding that he's worth any kind of contract.
Well, to be fair, I mean, he did show a lot of negative signs last year. I'm not saying that they're glaring, alarms and bells are ringing, but his hitting power began to drop. He hit 243 last year, a 409 slugging, but only had 17 home runs in 124 games. So we're seeing a little bit more injury from him. On top of that, one thing as far as scouts, when they have graded him out, he is not the best pitch framer, which is a big deal. And I said as an umpire looking in, one thing that bugged me last year was Wilson Contreras with the Cubs. If you watched a lot of his games last year, there was a lot of movement in his glove, especially on pitches that were low in the zone. A lot of pitches were below the zone, and you hate seeing that. I'm okay with framing pitches. I get that. I always tell a catcher, hey, if it's close, give me a good stick. Let me see it, okay? But if you're moving the glove up, down, in every which way but sideways, it's one of those things where if you try to frame everything, it makes it so hard as an umpire to give you that close pitch because every piece of junk that comes near the plate, you're trying to frame as a strike. No, I get it's funny when, a pitch bounces in and A.J. Pierzynski, squeezed it right on the black and tried to frame it, and it was all for fun, or he gets a pitch out and then frames it back down, and that's fine. But on every pitch, when you're getting a curveball, a slider, a splitter that's going down below the knees, and you're grabbing it and pulling it back up, and as a fan looking in just on TV, I can see that much glove movement. It's one of those things as a young catcher that you have to get better on. Because you don't want to hear this, and he stole a pitch, he stole it. No, it's not about that. So the Rays are a team that always look for, at least recently, look for a catcher who can frame the ball, who can get it where they need to, who can get a good squeeze. A little tick of the mitt, from 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock is one thing. But when you're literally pulling the mitt from the shins up to the knees, that's something that you can't do, especially in the big leagues. The zone is already very distinct in the explanation. Plus now with the raising of the zone potentially, I understand the concern with a guy like Matt Wieters if they are seeing a fall off in power. Plus he has an issue where he can effectively frame those close pitches. I can see where teams might get scared, but I did not think they would be so scared that they wouldn't even, there wouldn't be any legitimate offers out there that he would have considered to take, or if there have, we haven't heard it, coming into February 18th, 2017.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense. I mean, obviously, we're not going to sit here and go on and on about Matt Wieters like he's one of the top catchers in the game. He's not. He's a just above replacement catcher. Defensively, he's worth a game above replacement. Offensively, he's worth a game and a half above replacement. So it's not like he's the greatest catcher of all time and every team should have been rushing out to sign him, but he is a 9-time All-Star, 5-time Golden Glover who, while he has struggled at the plate for the last couple of years, has still been invited for the last 2 years back to the All-Star game. And I think that it's less what he's able to do at the plate and more how he acts behind it, like you were saying with the pitch framing issues, that are to blame for what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that you also look at with him, as much as we talked about him and what this guy, he's on this team. At the same time, and regardless of your opinion of some of these guys, when you're on a team and you're playing with the likes of Mark Trumbo and Chris Davis and Adam Jones and Manny Machado, and you've got guys that pop in the bat, it's also one of those things where how much were they pitching to him to try and avoid getting to them? So I also can understand why there may be concern, and that also makes me wonder if he goes to a place like Tampa Bay, how effective is he going to be? And I think that's why it makes sense for the Rays to offer him this contract, is you still have Jake Odorizzi, you still have Chris Archer for now. You and I both expect that at least one is probably going to be gone come the trading deadline this year. They already tried to move them, or there was talk of them being moved during the offseason. But when you're going to get this guy for, millions upon millions less than what everybody expected coming into the offseason, it's a sensible signing for them because of what they're going to end up getting. The risk is very low. The reward probability is very high. And you look at it, unfortunately, for Matt Wieters, he pretty much came from a contract year, and the market played him right into another contract year.
So Brandon Phillips goes to the Braves. Matt Wieters may be going to the Rays. But you know where neither of those players went?
The Hall of Fame?
That's probably going to be true, too. But neither of those players went to the American League Central. And if I look at our calendar correctly, the American League Central and the National League Central are our two last divisions to discuss to complete our trip around the major leagues. And in my opinion, since we've decided that we're not going to talk about the Cleveland Indians or the Chicago Cubs, we're going to do those as a standalone.
We're going to save them for the final. Yeah, save them for the final day of our breakdowns. I think that kind of might as well the last two teams standing end up being the last two teams for us to discuss what they need to do to hopefully meet again in October.
So, since we're not going to discuss those two teams, that leaves us with the Chicago White Sox, the Minnesota Twins, the Kansas City Royals, and the Detroit Tigers in the American League Central. And from my point of view, I know we need to go through team by team and break down their off seasons and whatnot, but from my point of view, this is the Indians division, hands down, and none of those teams have done anything, and this is going to be a pretty quick conversation.
Yeah, let me start off by saying if you're a fan of those teams, that's awesome, and your fandom, I think, is something that these guys love and that they need. If you aren't a fan of these teams, and if you can find it in your heart of hearts, just stick with us for a little bit, we greatly appreciate it because we understand that obviously none of these teams really have, at least the majority don't have a lot to look forward to this year. And I hate to say it, but it's true. And you mention it, and it's painful to say, but when it comes down to it, the Minnesota Twins and the White Sox, there's not a whole hell of a lot to be excited about. And Jose Quintana is now your number one starter. If you're a Sox fan, and you have Brett Laurie at second still, you have Todd Frazier. There was an expectation that Todd Frazier was going to be gone. He hasn't gotten moved yet. You have Jose Abreu, but what really is there to get excited about, guys? We talked about it this year, and this is really when the show began. We thought that the White Sox were, they came out red hot.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, are they going to go ahead and shore up this division and put a stranglehold on it out of the gate and not let it go? And not only did they let it go, it was one of the worst meltdowns over the course of an entire season that I have seen in a very long time. And I know you're
going to say it wasn't even the worst meltdown of that season.
Yeah. But if you look back at the Red Sox meltdown in, I think it was 2011, when Bobby Valentine was there, the same year you had the Braves lose the division coming out to the last day. And it's like, man, you guys were, how did you do this in the last month? And that's painful. But to start out as hot as they did, and none of us expect them to hold on to that kind of – no one thought they were going to keep that pace up for the entire year, okay?
No, they would have been 120-game winners.
Yeah, we're not playing in a video game. But I did not expect them to have – saying a precipitous drop to me is an insult to precipitous drops.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll ask you, Chris, and I get this is, and to be fair, clearly, we are not, we're not ESPN, we're not Fox, we're not going to have all these guys who are going to have this in-depth, almost carnal knowledge, if you will, of a team. But, at some point, what do the White Sox need to do to at least try and get back to being somewhat competitive?
Well, I usually have a pretty typical response in this situation, and I say pitching, but I don't think that that's the problem for the White Sox. I think it's everything else. They still have a great starter in Quintana. They gave up Chris Sale, which, love him or hate him, is going to hurt the team.
The jerseys are safe.
And, you really got to wonder if that sort of outburst that Chris Sale had was less about those jerseys and more about that precipitous drop that you're talking about.
And I think that's a fantastic point because this guy is widely considered – I think he started the All-Star game last year. Is widely considered one of the top pitchers in the American League and also in the game as a whole. But to feel like, hey, we're already having a difficult time coming into the tail end of the first half of the season and also continuing on into the second half. We're not getting any rhythm going. We had this great start. We've fallen off. And now I'm telling you as my management that this is not something – wearing these jerseys is a bother to me that I don't feel comfortable in and don't feel as effective as I want to be. And I get – and you know what, guys? If we're not here trying to defend the guy, and again, if you disagree or you think, you know what, he should have just shut up and pitched, we're good with that. You can always tweet us at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook. But it makes sense. Everything's boiling over. They're collapsing in front of him, and this guy can't even get the respect from management to say, you know what, we get this as a jersey thing, but I'm not comfortable with this. And they're basically telling him to kick rocks, go out there and pitch. We don't care how you feel. It's a very logical jump in that train of thought.
Yeah, and when you have a guy who is probably the best player on your team, the best individual guy on your team, and he comes to you with an issue like that, you should never, ever look at a guy like that and be like, I don't care. I don't care how you feel. I don't care what you feel like, especially when he has a legitimate issue with not being comfortable and not feeling like he's performing at his highest when your team is struggling. After having such a hot start and now your team is going through this horrible situation where it's struggling mightily to even win a single game, and you go weeks and weeks and weeks without winning games, and your number one pitcher comes to you and says, I don't feel comfortable in that uniform. I don't think I'm going to be able to pitch properly in that uniform. Let me wear something else. You don't look at that guy and say, nope, pound sand.
Right. And to your point about pitching, let's not forget the number of prospects, along with the grade and pedigree of these prospects that they got back just in the Chris Sale trade, not to mention the Adam Eaton trade to Washington. They got a bunch of arms. Michael Kopech got rid of the Thor hair, so that the shaggy blonde locks are gone. But the kid, now granted, I think he had a running start, but he threw like a 108-mile-an-hour fastball a month or so ago. I get you're not going to be able to pull a Happy Gilmore and take a couple of hops, skip and a jump, and then fire the ball in. But they have plenty of pieces coming back. I don't know if they're going to move Quintana. I understand that their goal would be to do so. But until this is in my mind, until you know or at least have a semblance of an idea of what you're going to get back from the guys from the prospects that you acquired in the trades. Quintana is on a deal that is very team friendly. Hold on to him. Don't trade him. Now, granted, see what you can get. And if you get overloaded with an offer, then you got to pull the trigger. I get that. But if it's something where you can hold on to this guy and he can solidify himself as a competent and able number one, because that's going to be the big thing here. He has to be able to prove that he can handle the duties of being a number one. Then hold on to him and see what happens. The other thing that they need to do, along with the hope that they get some bats in the lineup, and granted they got rid of a lot of the power, James Shields has to show up. The guy cannot go 6-19. He went 2-7 in San Diego with a 4.28 ERA. Okay, comes back to the American League, where we know that he pitched very well in Tampa Bay, was fantastic in Kansas City, went to San Diego, had a decent year his first year at 13-7, then tanked. When he came back in the AL, ended up being 4-12. His ERA with the Sox was a 6.77 and only 114 innings with Chicago. He has to get back to at least some form of what he was. At least come close to pitching 500, please.
Well, and the crazy thing is, we all know that the American League sort of struggled with earned run average, and they sort of struggle with earned run average on a year-to-year basis just because they have the benefit of the designated hitter. But there's no justification for a +6 ERA. At that point, the guy shouldn't be pitching anymore. He should sit down. Yeah. He should take a break. He should do whatever it takes to get his mind right. He has to get that ERA under 4. Otherwise, he's of no use to anyone. And you know what he's not going to be able to do? He's not going to be able to help the Chicago White Sox even beat the Minnesota Twins, who are probably the other most horrible team in Major League Baseball. Don't get me wrong. If you're a Twins fan, you have a storied history of strong fandom and great support for a team that almost left your city on 2 separate occasions. Guys like Cecil Fielder, Prince Fielder. Look, I'm sorry, not Prince Fielder. My bad.
You threw me off there. Now, I want to ask you this because I feel like we almost derailed right there, and I'm not sure what you just did. So back on the tracks. We're gonna kind of pick up, and Thomas the Train is back on the tracks, and we're gonna have him start chugging along. We know there was talk about Brian Dozier getting moved. He hasn't yet. Okay. Joe Mauer is, getting much older. Okay. Miguel Sano, you want to see him come into his own. The kid's still young, but last year in 116 games, only hit 236. So you want to see what he can do. You got Irvin Santana still as kind of your top guy. Mauer is pretty much done catching, as we said. The one that gets me, and I am, as most guys in the media will say, I have no desire to see a manager lose a job. I don't want to see anybody lose a job. But can Paul Molitor survive another season like this? You and I both think, and we said that Mike Scioscia likely, if the Angels do the same thing this year they did last year, probably we'll see the door. Molitor's a Hall of Famer, but can he survive even as a Hall of Famer with a team that they're not giving him anything? It's not his fault. He has nothing to do. But at what point do you just kind of figure out, all right, look, we got to blow it all up. Dozier's already, is probably one of the best pieces they have. They're looking to move him. Nothing really impressive in the bullpen or in the rotation. Irvin Santana, he got popped for steroids before. He's near 35 years old. Went 7-11 last year. I'm like you, man. There's not one thing they just overall they don't have any continuity, it seems, in that organization. Same reason that Ron Gardenhire, after having 4 or 5 years of consistently being in that kind of fighting the Detroit Tigers, who we'll get to in just a second. They were all, Gardy left and the whole team was already on a slope down, and you really feel like they're kind of in the bottom of that valley, and that mountain to climb looks really steep right now.
Right. And that's the thing. I don't see anything going on in the Twin Cities with as far as hope. I don't see anything to give people hope. I don't see anything to give the Twins hope, except maybe the fact that the Twins have the number 1 overall pick going into the draft in June, which is a hit or miss thing, especially in baseball. The baseball draft is a hit or miss thing anyway. You never know how a guy's going to do in the minor leagues. You never know if that guy, whether he's a high draft pick, a mids draft pick, a low draft pick, you never know which one of those guys are going to excel. Yeah, you have these numbers and these scouts who are going to tell you that chances are he's going to do better than other guys, but realistically, the draft doesn't present the same sort of immediate help for Major League Baseball clubs as it does for things like football teams. So, yeah, the Twins get the number 1 overall pick in the draft, but you're talking about losing their second baseman, and you're talking about a team that just couldn't seem to get out of their own way last season. By the way, I'd also like to espouse the dangers of talking about a team and getting into near rant mode and then looking at a different web page while you're doing it, because I meant to say Kirby Puckett, but Prince Fielder was on the screen, so Cecil Fielder came out of my mouth. I'm not sure how, and I just kept going with it. But anyway, they're probably going to lose their second baseman, and you don't see anything out there for them to replace him with. Even one guy who could have been a piece for them had Brian Dozier left in Phillips is now going to go to the Braves. So I just don't see how they're going to have anything left to really work with.
And that's, as you mentioned with the draft, and that's the thing is, even if you draft a kid that you think could be the face of your franchise, this isn't like the NFL where those first round picks are in the mix from the get-go. Those guys are going to be in the minor leagues normally 2, 3, 4 years. Steven Strasburg came up near the tail end, or more so in the middle of his rookie year. Bryce Harper was in the minor leagues for, I think, a year or two. So more often than not, these guys, they're not going to be able to make any kind of instantaneous or have any kind of instantaneous effect on the game. I'd like to see, the Twins and the White Sox come back to prominence. They had that one World Series for the White Sox back in 2005. We talk about parity in sports, but with any kind of sports, you're only going to have so many good players that you're going to be able to do things with any given year, and especially this year where, the Indians, who we'll get to in a couple of weeks, last year did it with a lot of guys who just believed in something that their manager said, and I think that's what we're going to see when we break the 2 World Series teams from last year down, is that how much the managers are not necessarily the same people, but they handle their personnel very much the same. They're very much focused on trying to keep a relaxed atmosphere while still making sure the guys are focused on doing their job. Now, another guy who has been very focused on guys doing the job, started out in a great organization with the Atlanta Braves as their third base coach, who is Ned Yost. Obviously, he is the manager of the World Series champions from 2015 in the Kansas City Royals. Now, the Royals, we know, have made quite a few moves. Something you told me is that they're really on the tail end of their window. And their window is certainly closing. I still think that they have the opportunity to make it a 3-horse race in the A.L.Central with the Tigers and with the Indians. I'm not so sure that they're going to have the same kind of luck that the Tigers will. I think the Tigers have a little bit more to show. but your hope is that Mike Moustakas comes back and he's healthy. Eric Hosmer should still be pounding the ball. Salvador Perez is going to do his job. The question now really becomes, what are you going to do in that rotation? We've discussed that their bullpen has changed. They've made moves. They've brought guys in. They've gotten rid of some guys. Obviously, Jorge Soler comes into right field this year, so we'll see what he brings to that, along with Alex Gordon. Lorenzo Cain is still there. We saw Raul Mondesi Jr. last year on the infield. We're going to see if he ends up staying up on there. Overall, there is still a fair amount of pop in that lineup, especially with the grabbing of Brandon Moss out of free agency. So the one thing that Ned Yost really focused on that helped that team win that World Series was the bullpen, and that's what we're going to see what they can do. That's the big piece that neither of us know yet. We know that Kelvin Herrera is in there. He is still going to end up being we expect to be the closer. Last year went 2-6, had 12 saves. Most of the guys that they had are gone. Wade Davis is gone. They picked up Joaquin Soria, a couple of others, or Joakim Soria. I'm sorry. To me, I still think that they can make a push. I'm not putting a stamp or a guarantee that they make it into the playoffs, but I don't think that they will have as rough of a season this year because guys like Moustakas are going to be back and hopefully stay healthy. When Moose went down, you could. I mean, I have a friend that lives in Kansas City. He's a big Royals fan, goes to a fair amount of games. Her husband works for the team. He's one of the guys that handles the replay headsets for the umpires on certain games. She said you could really kind of feel the life get sucked out of that city when Moose went down because, as I've said, Moose is the heartbeat of that team. Hosmer is just kind of that young, fiery face, if that makes any sense. I think that's what has made them such a good team is they have three guys who hold leadership roles in that team, but they're able to integrate that leadership seamlessly together, and you don't hear about clashes like you will in other clubhouses.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think Kansas City really has going for it is exactly what you just said, that their clubhouse atmosphere is tight and they do run smoothly as a team. But they have their own set of issues, and this is why I say that they're sort of in the end of their window. Their outfield is sort of a mess, right? You have Alex Gordon is going to play all three positions in spring training just to figure out where they're going to put him because he's their four-time Gold Glover. You have Jorge Soler, you have Brandon Moss, but Soler is probably going to play exclusively in right field. So now you have this position where an aging Alex Gordon who plays left field may have to cover the big ground in center field. And can he do that? Maybe yes, maybe no. Does he have the arm?
I still think Lorenzo Cain will probably be the guy. I mean, he's 30 years old. He hit 287 last year, a not a horrible drop, but he was over the 300 mark in 14 and 15. I still think that you're going to end up seeing Lorenzo Cain in center field. He's going to have a little bit more speed, I think better range than Alex Gordon will have. And there was some talk that I had heard about Alex Gordon potentially being shopped around. So we'll see if that ends up coming to fruition during the year. Alcides Escobar is also going to be in there now. You know, he's been there for the last 5 years at shortstop. I think you're going to see him there. Played every game last year, hitting 261. Mondesi Jr., and I had a chance to see them play in Tampa Bay, and they looked good. Mondesi was still pretty young, came up. I think he'd only been up for a couple of weeks at the time that I ended up seeing him. But played in 47 games. It wasn't. I mean, he hit a $185, so not that impressive. Struck out 48 times and walked 6. So, you know, not the best. 1 walk for every 8 Ks. but a double, 3 trips, and 2 round trippers. So I don't think there's any, they're hoping that what they saw in him when they drafted him, that the speed that he has, if they can get the discipline down, you'll see where that goes. The thing really is who's going to be, you have Whit Merrifield is who they're showing as their second baseman right now, played in only 81 games last year. So the question is going to be, who do they round out? At least the question for me is going to be, who do they round out the middle infield with? If Escobar is going to be your main guy at short, who are you going to put, at second? If Merrifield is kind of that young guy who you don't expect, he's 28 years old, maybe he becomes that Joe Panic. And you can hit the siren on me if you want to. Maybe he becomes that guy that out of nowhere, you don't expect much of him. He's just kind of there. He's quiet, does his job. Maybe it comes out to be Hosmer. Moustakas is going to be Moustakas. Let's see how well he moves over there at third. I think that's the one thing you have to hope is that he has the same range of motion and ability to defend that hot corner as he did prior to injury. But yeah, I definitely think that if the rotation that they have can be just a small semblance of what they've had, it's not going to be anything close to what they've had. We know that. But there's a good possibility they can at least vie, I think, for a wild card team. But I'm with you. I still think that it is the Indians' division to win, especially off of last year and getting Encarnacion.
So I guess I have a question, right? Obviously, they have Alcides Escobar at shortstop, and that's probably the anchor in that infield. I mean, Alcides Escobar is probably the one person on that infield staff who is not going anywhere and who shouldn't go anywhere because he's really good at what he does. Mike Moustakas is another one of those, has the potential to be one of those guys and has been one of those guys in the past. I just don't know. Like you said, I don't know that he has not necessarily the ability to cover that hot corner anymore, but does he have the ability to fight off these young kids that are behind him? Because
I still think he has the pop in the bat. I think Hosmer to me is still the main piece though on that infield. As good as Escobar is to me, it's still Hosmer's kind of the mainstay piece for me on the infield. Escobar's 31. Hosmer's in his mid-20s.
Is Mike Moustakas going to be able – how long is Mike Moustakas' bat going to be able to help him hold out against young, hungry kids like Cuthbert and Torres who are going to be coming up behind him? That's my question.
Well, you're looking at a guy who before last year, I mean, he's never hit over 300. Yeah, he's 28 years old. Highly doubt that. I mean, and he's coming up on a contract year along with who's had Perez and Hosmer. We've been talking about that for a while now. And you and I think both agree that Hosmer and Perez should be the two pieces that you focus on. Perez being number one, he's the catcher, he's the big boy, and I think Hosmer. Moustakas' best year batting average wise was in 15. He hit 284. He's broken the 20 home run number twice, one in 15, one in 12, 22 and 20 respectively. Not the worst when it comes to discipline though. Has one season where he struck out 124 times. That was in 2012, and the closest he's gotten since then was 83. So really 1 year where his discipline lacked, and it seems that he really kind of tightened that back up. You're seeing almost a 1 to 2, 1 to 2.5 ratio of walks to strikeouts with him, which is a good thing for a guy who's supposed to have a lot of pop in the bat. 82 RBI in 15. Obviously, the World Series year was his career year, and I mean, I think everyone knew they were pretty much destined for that World Series. They take the Giants to 7 games. I mean, Bumgarner pitches the game of his life. We know what happened because you tell us about it almost every single show. But I think 15 was the year for those guys. Moustakas needs to have a good, a career season this year to even have to make himself a viable piece in the free agent market. Now, what's going to help him is that he's still young. If he goes into free agency this year, he's going to be 29 years old, turns 29 on September 11th of this year. But the biggest thing for me with him is going to be that his numbers have been not sketchy, but nothing that really makes you stop and go, okay, this guy is really going to be a staple piece of a franchise, going to be the anchor of a franchise by himself. I think that's what he has really benefited from, is having kind of this three-hook type of thing in the Royals organization with him, Hosmer, and Perez. So I'll say this, if he doesn't have a great year this year, I worry what's going to happen with his career because I doubt that the Royals can sign him back. Unless he wants to stay and takes a pay cut, it makes me worry what's going to happen with his career when he goes somewhere else if they pay him big dollars to be a guy that I'm not so sure by the numbers that we've seen is in his DNA to be as a ball player.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so one final question about the Kansas City Royals. Do they come out on top of the Detroit Tigers?
Man, honestly, I think they. Yeah, I have no idea, man. The Tigers were kind of similar last year. They're up and down. They almost ended up making a run at the Indians and then kind of tapered off. One of the big pieces that they had in Cameron Maybin gets traded to the LA Angels. You have Justin Upton over there in left field. Something that was interesting that I saw a special on him. If you ever noticed, his time whenever he was in a cold weather environment has always kind of been a little sketchy. He was up near the 300 mark with Arizona. Hit 309, upper 280s in 11. The last couple of years, he was in San Diego, was decent. Obviously, San Diego didn't have much, but then last year in Detroit, he hit 246. That is the worst average of his career since he came in 2007. He had 221 in 43 games. Played 153 games last year, the third most in his career. So the question that you have to look at is, and you know, I get this. You played in the West Coast growing up, but a lot of guys don't respond well in certain weather. You just don't. And a lot of the numbers that I saw on this, and I can't recall, I think it was MLB Network where I saw this, but his numbers in cold weather are chilling. If I had a rim shot, then but they're not that good. When the weather heats up, so does he. But you're in Detroit. Last year, the season began in Detroit. It was frigid. It's going to be frigid near the tail end. So what you have to be worried about with a guy like Justin Upton is he going to have that same slow start because of cold weather? And I know that seems kind of like a trivial thing, but it's really not. J.D. Martinez and Wright, you have Miggy. Miggy's got to be Miggy. I mean, you just let him do his thing. You put him in the lineup in the 3 or 4 hole and just pat him on the butt on the way out and just say, hey, I'll see you after you make your round trip. 360 feet, we'll see you back in the dugout. Ian Kinsler was talked about being traded. We'll see where that goes. Victor Martinez is getting older but still has good pop in the bat. James McCann at catcher. Nick Castellanos at third. And Michael Fulmer, man, AL Rookie of the Year. There was no question about it. I think best rookie pitcher in the game last year, undeniably. Sitting behind Justin Verlander, who has seen, I think, a bit of a career resurgence. I think Verlander is having to learn the hard lesson that Father Time is undefeated, and you can't go your entire career overpowering guys. He's not going to start ramping it up anymore, Chris, and going into the 7th inning and hitting triple digits when you were hitting 96 in the first inning. His arm can't do it. He needs to outsmart hitters now, and I think that he's beginning to understand that and transition himself as a pitcher into – he still has nasty stuff, but he's learning to use it in a way now where he's going to get hitters guessing more than just trying to blow stuff past him with triple-digit fastballs.
Yeah. So for me to go all the way back and start where you started with my sort of input, we've talked about Justin Upton on this show. Justin Upton is not, in my opinion, a Major League Baseball player. He's a 4A type baseball player. He's the kind of guy that you see down in AAA who looks like he should be in the majors, and then when he gets here, he doesn't belong here. And I don't think there's really any question about that. It's just he had a couple of really great years, and then he just kind of nosedived, and he's never recovered from that nosedive. Center field and right field are pretty much set. Obviously, you have Miguel Cabrera. The only issue I have with Miguel Cabrera is that he's getting old. He's DHing more, which is probably the role that he should be in, to be honest with you. Maybe let Martinez play first base. Ian Kinsler, I'd like to see him stay. I'd like to see him play second base. Nick Castellanos, he's a strong third baseman. He's the kind of guy who can probably help that infield stay relevant. And then McCann, I like the move to McCann. I like having McCann behind the dish, especially for a guy like Verlander, because McCann is used to catching a top-notch pitcher like Justin Verlander is. And he'll be good for Michael Fulmer too, I think. But you're exactly right about Justin Verlander. And this is what I talked about. This is what I was talking about when we were talking earlier when I said that their staff is aging. I don't mean that their staff is aging. I mean Justin Verlander is getting too old to play baseball. That's exactly what I mean. Justin Verlander is probably at the tail end of a career that's going to land him in Cooperstown. But
at 33 years old, you think he's on the way down at 33?
I do. I think that once Justin Verlander gets to the point where he's not in the really high 90s in the 6th or 7th inning, he's going to start getting knocked around at a horrible pace. I'm talking about when Justin Verlander gets to the point where his fastball doesn't have the speed that it used to, he is going to have the type of drop-off that we saw with what's his name? San Francisco Giants pitcher.
With Matt Cain?
No.
Or Peavy?
No.
Lincecum.
That's the one.
You're welcome. Third time's a charm. But so then let me ask you this. So you're saying this guy's on. So you're saying he's on his way down, yet he posted the third best ERA of his career last year at 3.04 in 34 games. Went 16-9. I mean, still. I mean,
he played 80% of the season against the worst division in baseball.
And we hold that against him. Why?
We don't hold it against him, but we look at it as a reason why his ERA was so low. He wasn't playing against teams that could hit the ball. So he was playing against the Chicago White Sox and the Kansas City Royals, and he was playing against the Minnesota Twins.
It was 454 2 years in 2014, 2 years ago. Then 338 and 15 and 304. I mean, I understand that.
Let's not forget though that in 2015 he played against the Kansas City Royals, who won the World Series. In 2015 he played against the Cleveland Indians team, who were who were probably just as good as they were last year. They just didn't go as far. He played against a Minnesota Twins team they were still the Minnesota Twins, but he played against the Chicago. He played against the Chicago White Sox team in 2015 that got off to a decent start and maintained a decent pace through the season. They were a better team, and they were a better division in 2015 than they were last year. You talk about precipitous drops. That's what the entire Central did last year, was have a precipitous drop. I realize Justin Verlander. If you have an
argument about Verlander, here's my argument. Justin Verlander is the reason why we're having to get rid of the intentional walk. He made one intentional pass last year. Really, Justin? You couldn't have just, you know how much time you took from the game making one intentional walk last year?
Well,
took
it's all
so
his
much
fault.
time away.
It's all his fault. It's every bit his fault. But here's the thing. This is what I'm saying. We have sort of a theme on this show, a theme sort of saying about pitchers, and that is you can time a jet, right? If something comes off Justin Verlander's arm, if speed comes off Justin Verlander's arm, it's not just going to affect his fastball. That slider's going to get affected. That curveball, that big 12-6 curve is going to get affected. Everything is going to get affected. And if he doesn't have that put-away pitch, at 98, 99, 100 miles an hour in the 6th or 7th inning, he's going to get hit. And he's going to get hit hard.
With you, but I disagree with you on this because a guy like Steven Strasburg, his best pitch is that changeup. 10-mile-an-hour difference. Everyone still looks at Justin Verlander as having that cannon on his arm. So having things with movement, with drop, lowering the speed, to me will be better for him. The guy posted, one of his best whips, a 1.0 whip last year, even one whip. The second best whip of his career. In 2011, he had a 0.92, a 207 average against. Once again, the second best average against in his career. And you can say as much as you want, the division was bad. That's fine. But you're still playing 34 games around the entirety of Major League Baseball, and you come back and pitched one of the best seasons that he's had. Injuries, you could see he felt healthy. He's got a guy behind him, Michael Fulmer, who this isn't like the NFL where you got a quarterback and you're teaching your craft to the guy designed to fire you. Take your job. You're teaching your craft to a guy who can sit behind you in the number 2 spot and make a team lower their head and go, oh crap, we got Verlander and Fulmer in this 3-game set. We're screwed. Right. So at 33 years old, I say at least he's got 2 more years of being a solid pitcher. You may put Fulmer in the 1 spot and give him the ball at Verlander's age, 35 years start the season. But Verlander has, in my opinion, at least 2 more years of solid, strong baseball left.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
Before he begins to decline. He can go past 35, I think.
Okay. Calm down. Let me ask you a question. What is it that pitchers can do that it doesn't seem like any other player in the game can do as dramatically?
Come in for 1 inning, get 3 outs, and walk off the field.
No. They can fall off a cliff and never recover. That's what pitchers do more than any other player, any other position in the game. They fall off a cliff and they never
John Rocker. Yeah, recover. I agree. I can see that, certainly.
So if I told you that the National League Cy Young winner 2 years in a row at the ages of 24 and 25 and then was an all-star not only those 2 years but the following 2 years, was in the MVP talks, was going to turn 28 years old and fall off a cliff and never recover, what would you say? You would say
baseball happens.
You would say in 2011 at the age of 27 with a 2.74 ERA or in 2010 winning World Series.
Now I assume you're talking about Lincecum here.
I am, but I'm going to go beyond Lincecum. Don't worry.
No. I want to know your starting point so I know kind of who we're going through just so I'm aware.
But in 2011, in 2010 he went 16-10. In 2011 went 13-14. He still put up a 2.74 ERA, which, by the way, is the 3rd best ERA of his career in 2011. If he put up the 3rd best ERA of his career in 2011, you're going to say, and of course, at the age of 27, he's probably got 5 years left in him before he goes downhill, right?
I
Wrong.
would think that
The
my caveat
following
to that.
season.
I
Hold
get
on,
that.
because it's not just him.
But now I understand that we have seen. I mean, as a Braves fan growing up, Mark Wohlers was one of the hardest throwing closers I had ever seen, and he lost command and never came back. But everyone thought that last year that was Verlander's year. He went 5-8, a 3.38 ERA, and in 2014 he had a 4.54 ERA. So he comes back after 2 seasons that were, I mean, well below him. Everyone thought he was done. Like, holy crap, this is it. He had his moment in the sun. It's gone. He comes back last year and puts up. I mean, granted, it wasn't. It was almost one of those where it was done so quietly because he had done so poorly in 14 and 15, but comes back last year along with Michael Fulmer, who really dominated the news on the Tigers because of what he did and put up one of the best seasons of his career. I could be completely wrong on this topic, and he could fall off. He could be 0-8 to start the year and lose a starting slot. To me, from him to be able to come back, to have the mental fortitude to come back from 2 years where everybody doubted him, to put up the numbers that he did last year, and to realize that, you know what, I can't overpower guys, but he still has power that he can use to his advantage, makes him, in my opinion, a dangerous pitcher for the Tigers to still put out there every 5 days for the next 2 seasons.
Okay, and no, I get that. I get that. My point is that these guys that you're talking about that have those drop-offs where they fail and they never come back, they do it in their late 20s. This is happening in pitchers who are throwing that hard. It's happening in their late 20s. So when I say that a guy like Justin Verlander, all it takes is for him to lose a little arm speed and he might never be able to recover from it, at 33 years old, that is not a ridiculous statement. That is an absolutely fair statement. It is absolutely fair for me to say that at 33 years old, heading into his 34-year season, that he could lose some arm speed and it could be disastrous for him, and that it is a problem for the Detroit Tigers because he is getting older. You can never judge a pitcher based on what they did the year before. You can't.
No, well, I mean, unfortunately, it's all we can do. And yeah, he turns 34 in 2 days. All right. On Monday, he turns 34 years old. And you know what? It pains me to say this, but no, you're right. He's 27 wins away from notching 200. Will he get there the next 2 years? Who knows? I think so. I see you shaking your head. I get what you're saying, and your point is well taken. I'm not saying you're wrong because we've seen it happen multiple times. But my only thing with him is that to come back from the way that he was pitching and where he was pretty much thought to be dead and put him to pasture and comes back as strong as he did, all I can take is what he did last year and try and forecast it. To me, I still think that with Fulmer behind him, he's got plenty left in the tank.
It's a flash of light. It's a flash of life. And I will give you that much. But I just can't make myself think that is a indication of exactly what's going to be his future. Because the position
like I said,
is so
I don't think he's going to be
the main.
I don't think he's going to be the main piece for them. I mean, I think even in the next year or two, Fulmer may end up being the big piece, but I still think it'll be an important thing for them to have.
But he is going to go to Cooperstown.
True. I believe so, yes.
And when he gets there, he's going to meet this guy. He's going to meet this sort of swarthy-looking, handlebar, mustachioed guy who, in addition to being a Hall of Famer, has a really big mouth. And that guy is Goose Gossage, who I think is going to be our last story of the day. But as you pointed out to me earlier, Goose Gossage opened his mouth and ripped. Again. And ripped not only the greatest closer of all time, which you would think that as a closer, Goose Gossage would have a little respect for that. But ripped not only greatest closer of all time, but also ripped the active closer of the team that he is brought back year after year as an advisor for, in Aroldis Chapman. So,
yeah,
I'm going to let you take the front on this. What did Goose Gossage say?
Well, all right. So a lot of guys might remember last year. He's been kind of like this. I don't want to say special assistant, but kind of a guest instructor, and showed up at camp the last couple of years. And first thing, a couple of years ago, he mentioned that he thinks that Jose Bautista is a disgrace to the game. He's embarrassing all the Latin players because of the bat flip. He's made plenty of statements about Bryce Harper and his way of playing the game, which, regardless of what you think about Bryce Harper, and you and I discussed that there is a way the game is changing. So Goose Gossage was having a discussage to the New Jersey Advanced Media at Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, where the Yankees hold their spring training. And they were asking, what does he think about Chapman returning? Well, they're one-inning guys. So they asked, okay, so you're a three-inning guy, right? He says, yep, it's totally different. Don't even compare me here. Chapman's great. Mo was great for one inning. I would like to see these guys come into more jams, into tighter situations, and finish the game. In the 7th, 8th, 9th innings, I don't think they're utilizing these guys to the maximum efficiency and benefit to your ball club.
Now, as a caveat to saying that Goose Gossage is running his mouth, you and I have made that point, that there is something about having a single-inning specialist closer that doesn't quite sit right with us from the position of baseball purists, that we like to see guys who can pitch more than a single inning, who can throw more than 20 pitches. And I think that you and I have a point there, and I think that Goose Gossage has a point. But for you to discount what Mo Rivera did as a closer, regardless of how he was utilized, because let's not forget that Mariano Rivera pitched 131 innings in postseason play in his career, and allowed fewer runs than men who have walked on the moon.
Right. And I remember getting that set to add to our friend Adnan Verk, and he got a kick out of that one. And of course, guys, you can always find all of our interviews with Adnan Verk as well as Aubrey Huff last week, which, again, a huge thanks to him for coming on the show and telling us about his book, Baseball Junkie, on Amazon. You can find all those at our Facebook page, Out of Left Field, with Chris and Graham, as well as our Twitter page at OO Left Field on Twitter. One of the things that this reporter said is, quality start, 3 earned runs, 6 innings. It's a 4.5 ERA. And Gossage said, let me tell you something. These guys that pitch 1 inning with a 3-run lead and get a save, it shouldn't even be a save for 1 inning and a 3-run lead. This is not a knock against Mo. I'm just trying to make a point that I'd like to know how many of Mo's saves are of 1 inning with a 3-run lead. If everybody in that bleeping bullpen can't save a 3-run lead for 1 inning, they shouldn't even be in the big leagues. I'd like to know what percentage of Mo's 650 saves, now granted the actual number is 652, guys, or whatever he's got, are 1 inning. I'll bet it's over 20%. Look it up.
Well, and here's the thing. You can't look at Mariano Rivera and say that that's his problem. Mariano Rivera was paid to do a job, and he did it better than anyone else who was paid to do that same job has ever done it. And probably better than anyone who was paid to do that job ever will do it. Now, it's not 1975, and guys aren't going to go out there and throw 200 innings as a reliever, as a late reliever, in a single season. It's not going to happen. That's not how we play the game anymore. Now, I mean, he also says earlier in the interview that he thinks that 100 pitch counts are hurting starting pitchers, that it's hurting their endurance, and that they should let these guys go 130, 140, 150 pitches. I disagree with that, because it's not hurting their endurance, but letting them go 150 pitches is definitely hurting their longevity. I mean, what's more important? Letting guys come in and pitch a single inning and get recognition for being a single inning reliever, or forcing your starting pitchers out of the game after 6 years because they've thrown their arms out?
Right. Well, I mean, we look at what happened to Masahiro Tanaka. He comes over. He was throwing 200-300 innings almost a year when he came over from Japan, and then within his first, year and a half, had to have Tommy John surgery. And, this guy asked Gossage about talking to Rivera about his save. He said, I told him, yeah, we did it on the Michael Kay show. Don't compare me to Mo or what they do today. They're one-inning guys. I take exception to that. Don't even bleeping put me. Closer wasn't even a coined phrase. So when people say Mo is the greatest reliever, is what was asked next, he goes, that's BS. Do what I did and we'll compare apples to apples. Or Bruce Sutter or Raleigh Fingers, the guys that set the bar. I'll tell you what, setup guys have a harder role today than closers today. They come in with inherited runners. They come in to jams. So, Goose Gossage, I understand that you are in the Hall of Fame. There are a pretty good-sized group of people who don't think that you should be in the Hall of Fame. And this is an open invitation, if you hear the show, to come on and give us your opinion on this. Chris and I think, pretty firmly disagree with your take on Mariano Rivera. Yes, the game has clearly changed, but doesn't mean that Mariano Rivera isn't the best in the game at what he did. He is. Period.
Now that's not none of this is to say that Goose's his statements don't have merit, right? Obviously, this is what he believes, and he's entitled to his opinion. And obviously, if he wants to come onto the show, I would love to have Goose Gossage on the show to talk about the difference between being a 3-inning closer and being a 1-inning closer, and also to discuss the other areas that we have similar opinions, like that Barry Bonds shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, or that Pudge Rodriguez shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And I quote, yes or no, how about a bleeping yes or no?
And I'll just continue to tell him
Pudge's response.
And I'll just continue to tell him why I disagree with him, which is fine. I mean, I've had two wrong guys on the show before, and I'm okay with that. But end of the day, man, things have changed, but don't open your mouth and say something foolish. I mean, let's just you don't need to go insulting other guys. There's better things that are out there besides that. So, guys, a lot of stuff to get to. We still have the A.L.Central next week, and we'll finish everything off with the Cubbies and the Indians, our final breakdown of what was the off season. Now we're kicking off into the start of spring training in 6 days, the 24th. The ball is put in play on spring training. First games begin. We are all excited. Going to be a lot of good stuff. Make sure to check out, again, our Facebook and Twitter pages at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, as well as our YouTube page. You can find it with the same search there. We'll have a lot of videos coming up, hopefully some more interviews coming with some guys we've been in talks with, so hope to bring you those very soon. And, guys, with the season getting the ball put in play, we're going to start hearing the crazy injury stories, a lot of good stuff. We're going to see who are the pretenders, who are the real guys that are going to start making big moves in the spring training season, and figure out, hey, you might have a new starter on your team that you don't know about.
Speaking of crazy injury stories, does that mean we're going to talk about the pitcher that fell through the barn?
Yeah, I heard about that one. I haven't looked into it yet, but yeah, I had to do an eyebrow raise or two.
All I saw was Major League pitcher falls through his barn, and I went, God dang it, Madison Bumgarner, what are you doing? Luckily, it wasn't him.
Yes,
and I should have known because there was no wrestling steers involved.
There you go. So, guys, again, for Chris, Graham here, we love having you guys on, love doing the show. Look forward to seeing you guys back next week here on MF.